Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to have a quick chat with you all about Tucker Carlson. Recently, it was revealed that Tucker Carlson and his production team were given access to all of the security footage from the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol by House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Some of the writers saying that this is a great success in the realm of transparency, despite the fact that the footage is only being shared with one opinion host on a cable network, but that's not quite what I want to talk about today. The thing I want to actually focus on is the fact that this probably isn't going to work out as well for conservatives as they think it's going to. And that's really because Tucker Carlson does not have a good track record of telling the truth on air, and you can track that history through the multiple lawsuits that have been filed against him and Fox News as a result of what he's said on air. However, additionally, there is a worst case scenario where this footage being out in the world could actually lead to future threats to our national security. Let's start off by talking about Tucker Carlson's history with defamation suits and how his future coverage of the events of January 6 might get him and Fox into more legal trouble in the future. Now, he's no stranger to a defamation lawsuit, but Tucker Carlson's central defense usually relies on the argument that no one should believe a word he says. In fact, in one of his recent cases, Fox News lawyers came in and argued that Tucker Carlson engages in hyperbole and non-literal commentary, and that no reasonable person would believe what he says is a statement of fact. And the judge agreed with him because they won the case, and I'm inclined to agree with the judge. I think that anyone who talks as much as Carlson does about the sexual attractiveness and sexuality of the M&M's mascot should never be trusted about any subject whatsoever. That's just weird. And it's not the only case Carlson has gotten himself and the network in trouble for. Currently, he is one of the central figures of the lawsuits from both Dominion and Smartmatic, which are voting machine companies, who were targeted by Fox's coverage of supposed voter fraud in the 2020 election. Now, all of those allegations were fraudulent, and text messages have been produced by Fox News that show that Carlson, Hannity, and the rest knew that their claims about voter fraud were untrue. Matter of fact, I believe there was a quote from Carlson specifically talking about Sidney Powell saying, "I caught her lying about the election fraud," something to that effect, and this is all absolute nonsense. So, yeah, Tucker Carlson's history of telling events as they are, that's not great. So how's that going to cause him trouble going forward? Well, one of the big standards for proving a defamation suit is actual malice. You have to show that not only did someone say something about you that was untrue, but you also have to prove that they should have known or that they knew what they were saying was untrue. That's why those text messages are so important to Dominion and Smartmatic. In this case, Tucker Carlson has said a lot of weird things about the events of January 6th, that it didn't happen, or that it was Antifa or the FBI, or a whole host of other odd conspiracy theories to say that what you saw happen did not happen. But once you give him the tapes and he can see it for himself, now he's got that evidence and should know what happened. We've seen the footage from the Capitol. We know that, yes, there was violence against law enforcement. There were people going through the Capitol saying that they wanted to find lawmakers and do them harm. Hang Mike Pence, all of that. So that's really not going to help Tucker Carlson if he goes on and then says anything really false about it, especially if he attacks specific individuals. Let's say Officer Michael Fanone, who has been very open in his testimony about the events of the 6th as a member of the Capitol Police. Carlson were to go on his show and say, yeah, Fanone was lying about this, there was no violence, whatever he says, that's an assault on Fanone's character, and Fanone could sue Carlson for defamation. And because Carlson and his production team have seen all of the footage, they should know better. And that would be the central point of Fanone's case, or any other person who Carlson might attack. And that's going to be a really hard defense. Right now, obviously we're seeing the Dominion and Smartmatic cases getting ready to go to trial because they've got the goods to show that all these Fox News hosts knew that they were lying about voter fraud. And it wouldn't be too hard for someone to say, hey, we know Kevin McCarthy gave you the January 6 footage, so we know you know better than to lie about it. And that could make for really easy grounds for a defamation case against Carlson, should he choose to engage in that hyperbole and non-literal commentary that he's so fond of. So now let's talk about the possible national security implications of releasing this footage in its entirety. Now, if you were a terrorist organization and you wanted to stage an attack on the Capitol during an event like the State of the Union, where, much like January 6th, the president, or in that case the vice president, and all of Congress are gathered in one place, it'd be really helpful to know how Capitol Police and the Secret Service are going to respond in a crisis. Normally, U.S. government agencies follow what's called standard operating procedures, and it's essentially just a playbook where it goes, okay, if something happens, we're going to go through steps 1 through 10. It keeps everybody on the same page so that everyone knows what they have to do in order to respond effectively to the crisis at hand. There's a lot of stories of this from the military when we were in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, where terrorist forces would send civilians to see how close they could get to a newly arrived unit and how that unit would behave to different kind of attacks so that they could understand what our standard operating procedures were in that theater of war. And you can see how that concept translates to the footage from January 6th. If you were to stitch the camera footage together from all the security footage in the Capitol, you're going to be able to track the exact exfiltration route that they took Mike Pence through. You're going to know exactly where they took all the different members of Congress and their staff, where they hid them from the different people who were roving the Capitol looking for them. There's that clip where they show Mike Pence being ushered down a set of stairs. And that's really the only clip we ever saw of the vice president being evacuated. But again, you stitch together all the different cameras, you can map his progress through the entire Capitol, and now if you're breaking in, you have a good idea of where he might be at any point in time, and you know how he's going to try and get out, so you can then factor that into your plan and be ready to interdict him during his evacuation. And that is just a huge threat to national security. Now, we get to the question of how might that footage come out? Well, the nice thing about this, the only good thing, is that Fox News isn't storing the footage. Tucker and his production team had to actually go to the Capitol and get the footage that they needed from the Capitol Police. It's being stored at the Capitol, so I don't think that's the big threat here. But given that this information is being handed out in its entirety to a fairly unreliable cable news opinion host, this information is now very open to Freedom of Information Act requests, which can be made by any U.S. citizen. And again, if I was staging an attack, it wouldn't take too much for me to pay off a U.S. citizen to file that Freedom of Information Act for me. And it's going to be kind of hard to deny because, yeah, obviously it has national security implications, and one of the things that is covered under FOIA that isn't normally given out is either agency internal policies regarding operational things like standard operating procedures in the case of a crisis, and national security information. But now in court you could go into a FOIA judge and go, yeah, but it can't be that because they gave it to Tucker Carlson. And, you could bring up how Tucker Carlson is not necessarily a trustworthy person, and probably in fact show some of his coverage and how he's using the clips how he likes, so I should be able to use it how I like. And I'm sure that there are already some of the other cable news networks that are getting ready to file their own FOIA requests, because if Fox News can have it, in the spirit of transparency, CNN and MSNBC should have access to it too, as well as, any local channel. So I think that's where you start to have your security hole, is that if you're not careful, someone could come in and request this information and then use it to help identify weaknesses in our national security when it comes to the defense of the Capitol. And given what happened on the 6th, there are definitely some weaknesses in that system. So this could really end up being very detrimental to the safety of our elected officials in the Capitol. And I don't think that was fully thought out when Kevin McCarthy agreed to give Tucker Carlson all of this footage with no restrictions and no conversations with Capitol Police as to how that footage should be used. Honestly, I can't see anything positive coming out of Tucker Carlson being given access to this footage. Given his track record, he is most likely going to use it to try and lie to his audience and prop up his many crazy conspiracy theories about what really happened on January 6th. And I guess there is one positive in that if, and more likely when, he says something defamatory, it should be pretty easy to prove actual malice because he had access to all of the footage, therefore he knew what the facts were. Even if Tucker does like to engage in hyperbole and non-literal commentary that no reasonable person would believe to be fact. But putting Tucker aside, I think that the actual issue here is the national security threat. If someone like Tucker Carlson could get access to this footage, I don't think there's a legal justification for denying any citizen of the U.S. access to this information. And that does open up the possibility for it to end up in the hands of a hostile foreign entity, be that foreign government, terrorist organization, or anyone else who might want to plan an attack on the U.S. Capitol. By looking at these standard operating procedures that are shown from the Secret Service and Capitol Police and any of the other entities there, it could really help someone try and plan an attack on the Capitol to ensure that any attack would be a success. So, Tucker, instead of trying to get this footage out there and use it for your own purposes while compromising national security, I think you should stick to a niche that you're a little bit more qualified to talk about. Maybe something like the sexual attractiveness of anthropomorphized candy mascots. You seem to have a fascination with that one. Think about it. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more of my content, subscribe to the channel and make sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified whenever I post new videos. If you want to support me on my other social media platforms, all of the links you need will be in the video description below. If you have any questions about this video or another topic that you'd like me to discuss, leave me a comment and I'll do my best to get you an answer. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.